I was 60 feet in the air, controlling a ladle of molten steel worth a fortune, when my new supervisor climbed the catwalk to scream about efficiency. He didn't just reprimand me, he fired me mid-pour and ordered me off the platform immediately. I warned him the autolocks weren't engaged. He sneered. I left. 10 minutes later, $30 million of liquid fire destroyed the entire factory floor. In the steel industry, there is a specific smell that never leaves your pores. It's a mixture of sulfur, ozone, and the metallic tang of pennies, all baked together at 3,000 degrees. For most people, it's suffocating. For me, Aaliyah, it was the smell of my mortgage being paid and my daughter's college tuition accumulating one shift at a time. I was 44 years old, and for the last 15 of those years, I had been a ladle operator at Titan Steel. I wasn't just an operator. On the night shift, I was the operator. I was the only person certified to handle the big pour, the transfer of 200 tons of liquid steel from the electric arc furnace into the continuous caster. It was 10:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. The mill was vibrating with that low-frequency hum that you feel in your teeth more than you hear with your ears. I was in the pulpit, the glass-encased control room suspended 60 feet above the concrete floor. Below me, the ladle, a massive bucket the size of a small house, was glowing a terrifying, beautiful cherry red. "Temperature check," I said into my headset. My voice was calm. It had to be. Panic in the pulpit meant death on the floor. "Probe reads 2900. 2,900 degrees, Aaliyah. You're clear for the lift," came the voice of Ben, my floorman. He was a good kid, attentive. I wrapped my hands around the joysticks. They were worn smooth by years of my grip. "Copy that, Ben. Initiating lift. Watch the slag line." I gently eased the left stick back. The massive overhead crane groaned, the cables pulled taut, and the ladle lifted inches off its cradle. This was the delicate part. Liquid steel creates a slosh effect. If you move too fast, the molten metal creates a wave inside the bucket. If that wave hits the top, it spills. And if it spills, it melts everything it touches: hydraulics, electrical lines, people. My eyes were glued to the monitors, watching the flow rates and the weight distribution sensors. I was in the zone. Then, the door to my pulpit was thrown open. The sudden change in air pressure made my ears pop. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My hands were on the controls of a swaying bomb. "Aaliyah, what is taking so long?" I knew the voice. It was Gavin, the new shift supervisor. He had been transferred here 3 weeks ago from a logistics center. He wore a hard hat that was still shiny and a high-visibility vest that didn't have a single smudge of grease on it. He looked like he came out of a box. "I'm stabilizing the load, Gavin," I said, keeping my eyes on the swinging ladle. "Liquid motion is high. I need 30 seconds. 30 seconds is $300 in operational downtime," Gavin snapped, stepping right up to my chair. I could smell his cologne over the scent of the steel. It was overpowering and out of place. "The schedule says the pour happens at 10:45. It is 10:47. You are lagging." "I am ensuring we don't dump 200 tons of steel on Ben's head," I replied tightly. "Please step back. You're distracting me." "I am supervising you," he retorted, leaning over the console, his hand dangerously close to the emergency cutoff. "And from what I see, you're babying the machine. I looked at your metrics. You're consistently slower than the day shift operator." "The day shift operator spilled a ton of slag last week and ruined a mold," I said, finally locking the ladle into its travel height. "I haven't spilled a drop in 8 years. Now, let me pour." "Don't talk back to me," Gavin hissed. "I'm here to fix the inefficiencies of this dinosaur crew. Move the ladle, now full speed." I took a breath. Negative. Standard operating procedure limits travel speed to 50% when the ladle is full. Physics doesn't care about your schedule, Gavin. He was vibrating with anger. I could feel it radiating off him. He wasn't used to being told no, especially not by a middle-aged woman in coveralls. But he didn't understand the mill. He saw numbers on a spreadsheet. I saw the physics of death waiting to happen. I pushed the stick forward, adhering strictly to the safety limit. The ladle began to glide toward the caster. Faster, he ordered. No, I said. That was the moment the night shifted from difficult to disastrous. The ladle was now suspended directly over the tundish, the funnel that feeds the steel into the molds. This was the point of no return. Once I opened the slide gate at the bottom of the ladle, the steel would flow. It had to be continuous. If I stopped mid-pour, the steel would solidify in the nozzle, ruining the ladle and costing the company about $100,000 in equipment alone. "We are in position," I said to the floor crew via the radio. "Opening slide gate in 3, 2. "Stop." Gavin slammed his hand onto the console, hitting the hold button. The hydraulics hissed, and the massive ladle jerked to a halt, swinging dangerously on its cables. The liquid steel inside sloshed violently. I saw the heat warnings flash red on my screens. "Are you insane?" I yelled, turning to face him for the first time. "You just destabilized the load. It's swinging." "I am taking command," Gavin announced, his face red. "I gave you a direct order to increase speed, and you refused. That is insubordination." "That is safety protocol," I shouted back, grabbing the joystick to manually counteract the swing. "If I speed up, the centrifugal force will throw steel over the lip. We are 60 feet up, Gavin. Do you know what happens when molten steel hits the hydraulic lines below? It explodes." "I don't care about your excuses." He screamed, spitting slightly. "I am the supervisor. I set the pace. You are purposefully slowing down production to undermine my authority. I've seen workers like you before. You think because you've been here forever, you run the place. I am trying to keep us alive." "You are done," he said, his voice dropping to a cold, malicious tone. "Get out of the chair." My hands froze. "What?" "You heard me. You are relieved of duty. Get out of the chair. I'll finish the pour." I stared at him. He was serious. He was actually serious. "Gavin, you aren't certified for the big pour. You don't know the feathering sensitivity on this joystick. It's twitchy. If you open the gate too wide, you'll overflow the tundish in 4 seconds. "I have my certifications," he scoffed, puffing out his chest. "I did the simulation training at corporate. It's a joystick, Aaliyah. It's like a video game. Now move, or I will have security escort you out for trespassing." I looked at the monitors. The steel temperature was dropping. If we didn't pour soon, the batch would be ruined anyway. But if he poured... "Gavin, listen to me," I said, my voice low and deadly serious. "The slide gate on this specific ladle, number 4, sticks. You have to tap it twice to open, but then immediately pull back or it surges. The simulator doesn't teach you that. If you fire me now, you are going to hurt someone." "Ladle operators don't hesitate," he mocked, repeating a phrase from the company handbook. "And you are hesitating, you're fired. Effective immediately. Get off my platform." He pointed to the door. I looked at the swaying ladle. I looked at Gavin's arrogant, ignorant face. I thought about my mortgage. I thought about the sheer disrespect. And then a cold calm washed over me. "Okay," I said. I stood up. "You want the chair, it's yours." I unclipped my radio. "Wait," I said, pausing at the door. "Since I'm fired, I'm no longer liable for this shift, correct?" "Correct," Gavin smirked, sliding into my seat. He looked like a child sitting in a pilot's cockpit. "I'll note in your file that you abandoned the pour. Good luck getting unemployment." "And you're overriding the safety lockout?" I asked, pointing to the blinking yellow light on the panel. "Because the system locks me out when I stand up. You have to override it to take control without a badge scan." "I know how to run the board," he snapped, jamming his supervisor key into the override slot and twisting it. "System active. Now get out." He had just physically logged himself as the operator. He had just signed his name to whatever happened next. "Goodbye, Gavin," I said. I walked out of the pulpit and onto the metal catwalk. The heat hit me instantly, but it felt cold compared to the rage burning in my chest. The walk from the pulpit to the ground floor takes about 3 minutes if you use the stairs. It's a long, winding descent through the belly of the beast. Usually, I scan the floor as I walk down, checking for hazards, waving to the guys on the slag pot carrier. Tonight, I look straight ahead. I could hear the radio chatter in my earpiece, which I hadn't turned off yet. Tower to pulpit, we are waiting on the steel. Temp is dropping, what's the holdup? That was Ben. I paused on the second landing, my hand hovering over the transmit button. I wanted to warn them. I wanted to scream, run, but I was fired. I was a civilian. If I spoke on that radio, Gavin could sue me for interference. Then I heard Gavin's voice crackle over the channel. He sounded strained, tight. This is Supervisor Cole. I have taken control of the pour. Commencing open. I hurried my pace. I needed to be out of the splash zone. Copy that, Supervisor. Ben sounded confused. Watch the flow rate, sir. Tundish level is rising fast, sir. Sir, back it off. I reached the ground floor. The exit door was 50 yards away. I walked past the break room where Madeline, the night shift HR rep, was getting coffee. She looked up, surprised to see me. Aaliyah, isn't the pour happening right now? Why are you down here? I stopped. I placed my radio and my ID badge on the break room table. Gavin fired me, I said simply. He's in the chair. He's running ladle 4. Madeline's eyes went wide. She knew the mill. She knew Gavin, her face drained of color. He's running the big pour, but he's never. Pulpit, you're overflowing. Close the gate. Ben's voice screamed through the radio I had just set down. It was so loud it echoed in the small room. Then, a sound I will never forget. It wasn't a crash. It was a thump. A heavy, wet, massive thump that shook the concrete beneath our feet. It felt like a dinosaur had stomped on the roof. Immediately following the thump came the hiss, the sound of liquid steel hitting something wet, likely the cooling water lines. It sounded like 1,000 snakes hissing at once, amplified by a megaphone. Abort! Abort! Fire on the caster deck. Everyone out. The alarms began to wail, the specific two-tone siren that means catastrophic failure. Madeline froze. I looked at her. You might want to write this down, I said, my voice steady despite the shaking of the building. Time of termination, 10:52 p.m. Time of accident, 10:55 p.m. I pushed open the heavy steel door to the parking lot and stepped out into the cool night air. Behind me, the orange glow of the sodium lights inside the mill suddenly shifted to a blinding, brilliant white. The windows of the plant flashed as the electrical substation inside shorted out. I walked to my car, unlocked the door, and sat in the driver's seat. My hands were shaking now. I watched as black smoke began to pour out of the roof vents of the rolling mill. I didn't start the car. I just sat there, watching the empire crumble, knowing that 3 minutes ago I could have stopped it. But ladle operators don't hesitate, and neither did I when I was told to leave. The immediate aftermath of a steel mill disaster is strangely quiet for about 5 seconds. The alarms haven't fully ramped up, the fire suppression system is just hissing, and everyone is processing the impossible. But then the chaos hits like a physical wave. From my car, I watched the steel doors of the rolling mill burst open. Men in heavy, silver-lined proximity suits stumbled out, coughing and tearing off their face shields. I scanned the crowd instantly, counting heads. Ben Iron, Mike's nephew, little Ricky. The Tundish crew. They were all moving, thank God, but the building itself was groaning. A deep, resonant boom echoed from inside, likely a hydraulic accumulator exploding from the heat. The smoke turned from black to a terrifying, acrid yellow-white. That meant the electrical room was burning. The insulation on the high-voltage cables was vaporizing. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. It was Madeline, the HR rep I had left just moments ago. Aaliyah, where are you? You have to come back. Gavin is. He's screaming on the radio that you sabotaged the ladle. He says you locked the controls. I picked up the phone, my voice steady but cold. I am in the parking lot, Madeline. I was terminated at 10:52 p.m. I have no authority to enter the premises. If I go back in there, I am trespassing on a hazardous site. You know the rules. Screw the rules. She shrieked, the panic clear in her voice. The ladle is still pouring. He can't get the slide gate to close. It's dumping the entire heat onto the casting floor. It's melting the tracks. Tell him to hit the e-stop, I said, watching a plume of steam erupt from a vent. The big red button on his left, it kills the hydraulics. He says he did. It's not working. Then he melted the hydraulic lines, I said, realizing the gravity of his error. If he kept the gate open too long, the overflow hit the main manifold. There is no hydraulic pressure to close the gate. It's gravity-fed now. It won't stop until the ladle is empty. There was a pause on the line, filled only by the background roar of alarms. "Oh my God," Madeline whispered. That's 200 tons. "Yes," I said, "and it's going to pool in the basement, if there is any water down there, any standing water at all." I didn't finish the sentence. Everyone in the industry knows the equation: molten steel plus water equals steam explosion. Rapid expansion. It's like a bomb. Get everyone to the far assembly point. Now, I ordered, forgetting for a second that I didn't work there. Do not let anyone go back for their gear. Just run. I hung up. A moment later, the ground shook. Not a vibration, but a heave. A dull thud resonated through the asphalt of the parking lot. A massive cloud of steam and dust blew out of the side bay doors. The explosion had happened in the basement. Containment was breached. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. That was the caster. The continuous caster was the heart of the mill. It cost $30 million to build and likely another 10 to install. And Gavin had just melted it into a puddle of modern art. I started my car, put it in reverse, and slowly backed out of my spot. I drove to the gatehouse, scanned my badge to exit, which thankfully still worked, and drove home. I didn't speed. I didn't cry. I went home, took a shower to wash the smell of the mill off my skin, and sat in my kitchen in the dark. I waited for the phone to ring. I knew it would. They always need a scapegoat when the bill comes due. The next morning, my phone had 47 missed calls. Most were from unknown numbers, likely reporters or corporate lawyers. 3 were from Madeline. 1 was from a number I didn't recognize, but the voicemail simply said, "Don't talk to anyone until you call me." I knew that voice. It was gruff, sounded like it had been gargling gravel for 40 years. I dialed the number back. "Hello, Aaliyah," the voice answered on the first ring. "Morning, Mike," I said, sipping my coffee. My hand was still shaking a little. "How's retirement treating you?" "Better than your night went, apparently," Iron Mike chuckled, though there was no humor in it. I heard the boom from my porch. My nephew Ricky called me, said the mill looks like a war zone, said Gavin Cole was running around screaming that you hacked the system. "I didn't touch a thing, Mike," I said, staring at the steam rising from my cup. "He fired me, mid-pour, told me to get out. He overrode the safety lockout with his key. I have witnesses." "I know you didn't," Mike said. "But corporate is already spinning a narrative. I got a buddy in legal. They're saying you abandoned your post during a critical operation, causing a catastrophic failure. They're going to pin the whole $30 million on you, Aaliyah. Negligence. Maybe even criminal charges for endangerment." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. "They can't, the logs." "Logs can be edited," Mike interrupted. "Or lost in the fire. Gavin's uncle is on the board, did you know that? That's how a kid with an MBA and 0 floor time gets to run a shift." I hadn't known that. It explained the arrogance. It explained the shiny vest. "So what do?" I asked. "I don't have lawyer money, Mike. I have single mom with a mortgage money." "You don't need a lawyer yet," Mike said. "You need a specialist. Lucky for you, I know a guy." "You mean you?" "I mean me," he grunted. "I run Industrial Forensic Solutions now. We consult for OSHA. And guess who just got hired by the insurance company to investigate the claim? Me." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "You're the investigator." "Independent third party," he corrected. "But here's the thing. I need you to come in. Today, they've called an emergency board meeting. They want to interrogate you. They think you'll be scared, apologize, maybe sign a liability waiver to avoid being sued." "I'm not signing anything," I said, my voice hardening. "Good, because we're going to walk in there and hand them their own heads on a platter. But I need one thing from you." "What?" "Did you take your logbook?" Every operator keeps a personal logbook. It's old school. We write down start times, stop times, anomalies. It's our backup brain. "It's in my locker," I realized with horror. It's still in the mill. Damn, Mike swore. If Gavin gets to that locker, your timeline disappears. He'll rewrite history. Okay, change of plans. Meet me at the diner on 4th in 20 minutes. Bring your badge if you still have it. We're going fishing. The corporate headquarters of Titan Steel was a glass tower downtown, far away from the grit and grime of the mill. The air conditioning was silent, the carpet was plush, and the coffee tasted like it cost $5 a cup. I sat at the end of a long mahogany table. On one side sat Mr. Wilson, the director of operations, looking tired and pale. Next to him was a woman in a sharp suit, corporate legal counsel. And then there was Gavin. Gavin looked different. He wasn't wearing his pristine vest anymore. He was in a suit, looking solemn, acting the part of the traumatized leader. He wouldn't meet my eyes. MS. Aaliyah, the legal counsel began, opening a thick folder. Thank you for coming in. We are here to discuss the events of last night. Specifically, your decision to leave the control pulpit while a 200-ton ladle was suspended over the caster. I didn't decide to leave, I said clearly. I was ordered to leave. Supervisor Cole's report states otherwise, she said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. He states that you became belligerent when he asked for a status update, refused to follow standard procedure, and then stormed out, shouting, and I quote, "If you think you can do better, do it yourself." I looked at the paper. It was a typed statement, signed by Gavin. That is a lie, I said. He ordered me to increase the travel speed beyond safety limits. When I refused, he fired me. He used the phrase, "Ladle operators don't hesitate." Then he physically took the chair. Do you have proof of this? Mr. Wilson asked, looking at me with disappointment. Aaliyah, you've been with us for 15 years. Abandonment it's a termination offense. But the damage, $30 million. The insurance company is asking questions we can't answer. I am telling you the truth, I insisted. Check the pulpit voice recorder. The recorder was damaged in the fire, Gavin said quickly. The heat melted the wiring in the ceiling. We lost the audio logs. Of course they did. And the control logs, I asked, the keystroke data. Corrupted, Gavin said, a hint of a smirk returning to his face. Power surge scrambled the local server. I looked at him. He had covered his tracks. He had destroyed the mill, and now he was using the destruction to hide his incompetence. He was going to ruin my life to save his career. So, the lawyer said, clasping her hands, here is our offer. You sign this statement admitting to negligence and resignation. In exchange, Titan Steel will not pursue legal action against you for the damages. We will handle the insurance. You walk away clean, but without severance or benefits. And if I don't? Then we sue you for the deductible, she said coldly, which is $5 million, and we file criminal negligence charges. The room was silent. They had me cornered. Without the logs, it was my word against the supervisors, and he had the corporate machine behind him. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors at the end of the room swung open. Sorry I'm late, a voice rasped. Traffic was murder. Iron Mike walked in. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing his old Titan Steel foreman's jacket, patched and faded, over a clean button-down shirt. He carried a battered leather satchel. Who are you? The lawyer demanded. This is a closed meeting. I'm the independent investigator for Zurich Insurance, Mike said, dropping a heavy laminated badge on the table. It slid all the way down to Mr. Wilson. And I'm here to find out why I have to pay for a new caster. Mr. Wilson picked up the badge. His eyes went wide. Mike, you're the investigator. That's right, Wilson, Mike grinned, pulling out a chair next to me. And I brought a friend. He gestured to the door. Behind him walked in Agent Martin from OSHA, a tall man with a serious face and a federal badge on his belt. Agent Martin, Federal OSHA, he announced. We are seizing all digital assets related to the incident, including personal devices. Gavin's face went from smug to terrified in a single heartbeat. Now, Mike said, opening his satchel, let's talk about those corrupted logs, shall we? The air in the boardroom shifted instantly. It went from a corporate execution to a federal raid. Agent Martin didn't even sit down. He walked straight to the side table where Gavin had placed his laptop and phone. "Don't touch those," Gavin stammered, half rising from his chair. "Those are personal property." "Not anymore," Agent Martin said, his voice flat and bored, like he'd said this 1,000 times. "Under federal investigation for a catastrophic industrial accident involving potential negligence, all devices on the premises are subject to immediate preservation. Unlock them, or we take them to the lab and bill the company for the forensic crack." Gavin looked at the company lawyer, desperate for a lifeline. She didn't look at him. She was staring at Iron Mike, realizing the game had changed. She slowly closed her folder. "Do as he says, Gavin," Mr. Wilson murmured, looking pale. He knew Mike. He knew that if Mike was involved, there were no skeletons left in the closet. Gavin's hands shook as he typed in his passcode. Mike, meanwhile, pulled a thick stack of papers from his battered satchel and slammed them onto the mahogany table. The sound made everyone jump. "You said the logs were corrupted," Mike growled, leaning forward on his knuckles. "Power surge, right? Fried the local server." "That's what it told me," Gavin said, his voice thin. "The heat from the ladle, the radiant energy." "Bullshit," Mike said. "The server room is in the basement of the admin building, 300 yards away from the melt shop. It's on a separate grid. It has halon fire suppression. A nuclear bomb could go off in the caster, and that server would still be humming." He slid the top paper across to Mr. Wilson. "This is a printout of the access logs from 10:45 p.m. to 11:00 p.m. last night. Pulled directly from the backup cloud server in Chicago. Turns out, your local corruption didn't reach the off-site backup." Mr. Wilson picked up the paper. His eyes scanned the lines. "At 10:47 p.m., Mike narrated, pointing a thick finger at the page, "user ID Aaliyah Vance logs a safety stop high swing amplitude." That matches her story. She tried to stabilize the load. "And here," Mike continued, tapping the paper harder, "at 10:50 p.m., user ID Gavin Sup executes a manual override level 5. That's the supervisor key. That's the God mode key. It bypasses all safety interlocks, including the swing dampeners." I was trying to save the heat." Gavin protested, sweat beading on his forehead. She was stalling. The steel was cooling. I had to take control. "You took control, all right," Mike said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You locked her out. See this line. Operator station lockout engaged by supervisor. You physically removed her ability to control the crane. You fired her, Gavin, in the middle of a critical lift." She abandoned her post. Gavin yelled, slamming his hand on the table, trying to regain authority. She walked out. "She was locked out," I interjected, my voice sharp. "I couldn't move the joystick if I wanted to. The dead man switch was disabled by your key." The lawyer finally spoke up. "Mr. Cole, is this true? Did you override the safety systems?" It was a judgment call," Gavin stammered. "Productivity was down. I needed to speed up the cycle." "And this?" Mike asked, sliding another paper across. "This is the interesting part. At 11:15 p.m., 20 minutes after the explosion, while the mill was burning, someone accessed the local server logs from an IP address assigned to, let's see, Admin Office 3 Supervisor Terminal, and attempted to delete lines 450 through 480. The room went dead silent. "Attempted deletion of evidence," Agent Martin said from the corner, looking up from Gavin's phone. "That's a federal felony under the Sarbanes-Oxley Act." Gavin looked like he was going to vomit. "I didn't delete them." He cried, "I was just reviewing them to make sure they were accurate." "You tried to erase the fact that you opened the slide gate to 100%, Mike said quietly. "You dumped 200 tons of steel in under 3 minutes. The caster can only handle 60 tons a minute. You flooded the mold. You overflowed the tundish. You melted the hydraulic lines. You caused the explosion, Gavin, and then you tried to frame her for it." Mr. Wilson stood up. He walked over to the window and looked out at the city skyline. He didn't say a word for a long time, then he turned back to the table. "Gavin," he said softly, "pack your things." "Not so fast," Agent Martin interrupted. "He's not going anywhere just yet. We need to verify the timeline with the black box data." "The crane has a black box," Gavin whispered, realizing the depth of his ignorance. "Every overhead crane rated for over 50 tons has a flight data recorder, just like an airplane," I said. "It records stick movements, load weight, swing angle, and most importantly, who is in the chair." "We recovered it this morning," Mike said, pulling a small, charred orange box from his bag. "Fireproof, impact-proof, idiot-proof." He plugged a cable from the box into his own laptop and projected the screen onto the boardroom wall. A graph appeared. A blue line showed the ladle height, a red line showed the travel speed, and a green line showed the slide gate position. "Here is Aaliyah's shift," Mike pointed to the smooth, steady lines on the left. "Perfect control, swing dampening active, slide gate feathered at 40%. Then, a jagged vertical line cut through the graph. Here is where the supervisor override key was turned. The graph went crazy. The red line spiked to maximum. The green line, the slide gate, shot up to 100% open and stayed there. "You slammed it open," I said, shaking my head. "I told you it sticks. You have to tap it. You just jammed it forward." "And look at the swing," Mike pointed to a chaotic, oscillating wave on the bottom graph. "You were swinging the ladle like a wrecking ball while pouring. That's why it splashed. That's why it hit the hydraulics." But the most damning evidence was the audio. Mike clicked a file named Cabin Audio Restored. The room filled with the static-laced sound of the pulpit. "Ladle operators don't hesitate," Gavin's voice sneered from the speakers. "And you are hesitating. You're fired. Effective immediately. Get off my platform." Then the sound of a door closing. Then, moments later, heavy breathing. The sound of plastic cracking. "Come on, move faster." Gavin's voice panicked. "Why won't it stop swinging? Stop, stop." Then the thump, the hiss, and the scream of the alarms. Mike paused the recording. "Any questions?" He asked the room. The corporate lawyer closed her eyes and rubbed her temples. "No questions." She turned to Mr. Wilson. "We need to settle this. Immediately. If this goes to court with this audio, the jury will award her the entire company." Mr. Wilson nodded grimly. He looked at me. "Aaliyah, I don't know what to say. We trusted the wrong man." "You trusted a spreadsheet," I corrected him. "You put a boy in a man's job because he promised you better numbers, and he cost you $30 million. Plus the EPA fines," Agent Martin added helpfully, "and the OSHA violations, and the downtime." "What do you want?" Mr. Wilson asked me. "Name your price." I looked at Gavin, who was slumped in his chair, defeated. I looked at the lawyer. I looked at Mike, who gave me a small wink. "I want 3 things," I said. "First, full back pay, plus overtime, plus a consulting fee for the stress of this meeting. Let's call it $200,000. The lawyer nodded instantly. "Done." "Second," I pointed at Gavin, "he is terminated for cause, no severance, and Titan Steel issues a public statement clearing my name of any negligence." "Done," Mr. Wilson said. "He's gone." "And third," I said, leaning back in my chair, "I want my job back, but not as an operator." "What then?" "Director of Safety and Training," I said, "with a mandate to rewrite the entire supervisor certification program. No one, and I mean no one, steps onto that floor without passing my test. And my salary matches yours, Mr. Wilson." Mr. Wilson blinked. He looked at the lawyer. She shrugged. "It's cheaper than a lawsuit," she whispered. "Done," Mr. Wilson said, extending his hand. 6 months later, the mill was humming again. The new caster was installed, this time with triple redundant hydraulic shielding, a design I had insisted on. I stood on the catwalk watching the new night shift crew. They were good, careful, respectful. Director Vance. I turned. It was young Ben, now the lead pourer. "We're ready for the lift. Temps are good." "Take it slow, Ben," I smiled. "Physics doesn't care about the schedule." "Copy that." I walked back to my office. It was the big one, the one that used to belong to the plant manager. On my desk sat a framed photo of the old ladle, scarred and burnt. My phone rang. It was Iron Mike. "Hey, boss," he laughed. "Just saw the news. Looks like Gavin Cole is having a bad week." "Oh," I asked, putting my feet up on the desk. "Yeah, the insurance company went after him personally for gross negligence. They pierced the corporate veil because of the criminal intent to delete logs. He's on the hook for $5 million. He's filing for bankruptcy. And he's working at the car wash on 5th, manager trainee." I didn't laugh. It wasn't funny. It was just gravity. What goes up must come down, especially when you cut the cables. I hung up and looked out the window at the smoke rising from the stacks. It was a beautiful sight. The mill was safe. My daughter's tuition was paid in full. And for the first time in 20 years, I didn't smell like sulfur. I smelled like expensive soap and justice. I picked up my pen to sign the daily safety report. I was Aaliyah, the Iron Lady. And nobody fired me.